Okay, so I'm going to continue a little some of the hauntology of Paul Burwell that we've been hearing about. And Paul, in a very extraordinary interview as a young man downstairs, talks about the essence of improvisation. So I'm just going to talk a bit, reflect a bit on this exhibition that I see down there. But first I should explain why I have these. These are oars, or what you would call blades. They were donated, or not donated, they were lent to us by Dundee University Boat Club. And they are sculling blades. So I scull, as you can see here in this performance on the River Aura. And I have a very close relationship with rivers, particularly the River Thames. But we find ourselves standing here in Dundee by another magnificent river, the River Tay, on which these oars are usually used. And if any of you here are students, because I think it's only for students, please can I encourage you to try rowing, to go and join Dundee University Boat Club, because it's an extraordinary thing to do, to be on the water like this. Looking down at that exhibition, you can see Paul Burwell, Anne Bean and Richard Wilson in the water while playing and improvising during one of their performances. But these things are used to keep you out of the water, as you can see. They're for balancing. So if I show you, oh, they make a noise. Oops, yeah, sorry. If I show you, you would hold them like this and put your thumbs on the end, and you're in the backstops position like this, and this is how you start. And then you take a stroke like this, and then you pull back and you turn and you pull them through the water. And the River Thames and the history of my work as firstly the editor of Performance magazine and secondly the curator traces quite nicely the history of Gamelan. I was always kind of a fellow traveller of them. But first, Paul Burwell, we saw pictures of the London Musicians Collective in Gloucester Avenue. I first met Paul in that place, and also very much in the Engineer pub, which we frequented a lot. And Paul became a regular writer for Performance magazine, which I edited between 1979 and 1987 when I became a curator. And Paul then, living in his lair underneath Nick Kimberley's bookshop, Duck Soup, would produce a column, and I would go round, and quite often in the same sort of improvisational methodology, I would sit there and have to drink tea while he finished his column, and then I would rush it off to the typesetters on my bicycle. And then we were offered some unexpected money from the Greater London Council just before it was being abolished by Margaret Thatcher. And I went down and literally stood in a queue for 2 days to get money. I think it was a sum of about £3,000 or £4,000 from the Greater London Council before it was being abolished. And this was for a programme called Arts in Danger. And we slightly changed that and called it Art in Danger. And this was in 1984. And we presented the fourth iteration of the Gamelan Ensemble in Daguerre's diorama. And it was a really very magnificent thing to do, magnificent and dangerous performance, I remember it being. Really was a pre-health and safety performance. It was really quite incredible. Just klaxons going off, explosions everywhere, all in a really tight circular space. And so, just see, this, what you can see me doing here, sitting in the boat, is kind of, well, I'm not an artist, I am a curator, but Anne Bean once persuaded me to make a performance in 1987 at the Laying Art Gallery in a piece called Pain Tings. And then 30 years later, in fact last year, we did that again in a performance called paintings. And that then inspired me to actually, we just heard about shedding skins, to shed my skin. Anne inspired me to shed my skin and do this performance. This is actually on the River Ora in Finland. And so I am a single sculler. I have been doing this. It may look easy, but it's actually rather difficult not to fall in. I've been doing it for about, I suppose, 25 years. And as you see, what I'm doing is a performance called Close to the Water. So I'm actually reading with a radio mic, a bit like this, reading actually a history of Finnish church boat rowing, and also a reminiscence of the Thames watermen who used to race on the Thames for wages. So I'm again reminded of the watermen when I see when I saw the Gamelan Ensemble actually performing outside Waterman's. And what was the name of that performance that you did down on the Thames?
Offshore Rig.
Offshore Rig. One of the most extraordinary performances of Gamelan Ensemble. So we have this in common, the River Thames, and again another Paul Burwell story, and Richard, in fact, and Anne, I think, may have been there. We were actually on the boat that was owned by Ron Hazelden and is now, I believe, owned by Richard, or maybe not, was owned. And what was the name of that boat, Richard? The Coral Star. So we were on the Coral Star. It was exactly 29 years ago. I know it was 29 years ago because my first son was a baby at that point. He's now 29, Max. So I was on that boat with Max, his mother, and a bunch of us, and of course we were all getting extremely drunk. And there was an artist on that boat called Jock McFadden, who very famously had a very large giant poodle. And the giant poodle escaped and jumped into the Thames and swam off. And as I remember it, Richard and Paul swam after it, leaving no one with any capability of steering the boat. And so it's this sort of notion of being in the middle of the Thames, and you can see here, I dropped the script at some point. I'm trying to read the script. So this idea of being in the Thames, on the water, close to the water, which brings me back to these wonderful objects here. These are sculling blades, and we see at the end here the spoon. We see at the end here the handle, and we see here the collar. And these are then inserted into the gates at the end of the riggers. So I am, having responded to the challenge by Anne to shed my skin as a performer, I am now going to challenge the Gamelan to extract the essence of these objects. Not transform, because we've got to give them back, but I want you to extract the essence of these oars. Are you prepared to do it?
Yep.
Okay. Excuse me. They do make a great noise, don't they? Okay, so I'd like you to go into the position.
It's going to require a bit of dark.
Oh, okay, right, okay, yeah.
Can I just add
Yeah.
to Rob's wonderful story about Paul and I jumping into the river? As soon as we'd both gone over, I recognised that Paul couldn't swim.
Yeah, that's a naval tradition, isn't it? Not being able to swim.
It makes sure you keep your boat floating.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I am going to present you with the oars, these blades, which very much are a symbol of the River Thames, and I'm going to challenge you to extract the essence. So I'm going to give sorry, which is the green one? I can't see which is green. No, there should be a red and a green. Okay, well, let's just assume, that's red. Okay, so this is called the stroke blade, and this is called the bow blade. So I am going to present Richard with the bow or bow blade. Excuse me, there you are. Be careful not to hit anybody with it. And I'm going to present Anne with the stroke blade. And I now invite you to extract the essence of these objects.
It's an old Gamelan.
I think in terms of extraction, we'll drink a toast to you, Rob. Do have a glass. And
You just drink it like this.
You blow it out.
You blow it out first.
This is a very old Gamelan toast in Sambuca and was often done on the River Thames, rowing late at night between islands. This is the essence. To all of you.
To Paul, Anne and Richard. Oh!
It's very hard.